What's going on, everybody? Today is October 21st, and in this video, we're going to take a look at a number of blog posts that I've done over the past week. It's been about 7 days or so since I made my last video, and we're going to focus on the top of this video about a number of stories about the virus. I guess I'll say. My crafty way of getting around the algorithms, maybe. But we're going to look at how, once again, every time a celebrity is diagnosed and the story is published in the media, there's a numerical code behind it. Of course, we won't see a day where we have all of a sudden 20 celebrities at once diagnosed with the virus. It's all happening at a staggered pace. And now that we're in the month of October, we've actually seen a renaissance of these stories that we started to see back in March and April when it seemed to be trendy to get the virus. So just as an example of how Gematria is used in media before we talk about these corona stories, one of the most basic examples I've seen in recent memory is this story about Bill Cosby, whose new mugshot was trending on social media as it looked like he was smiling. And the riddle here is very simple. On the date of this news story, Bill Cosby was a span of 999 months and 9 days old. Using the standard 26-letter alphabetic order, assigning one number to each letter in the name Bill Cosby, B the second letter, I the ninth letter, L the 12th, and so on, the name Bill Cosby has an ordinal value of 99. Cosby was found guilty of a number of sexual assault charges back on April 26th of 2018. Also including the end date, that was a span of 909 days after he was found guilty. So you get this alignment with the number 99 several times, his name summing to 99, and what do you know? He pops up in the news. Cosby lost one son and one daughter, one of whom died in the year 97, Ennis Cosby. In reduction gematria, William Henry Cosby Jr. sums to 97. That's Bill's full name. The word death equals 97. And this story was also 970 days after the death of his daughter, Ensa. So a very simple numeric riddle showing us once again that the news that we see in the mainstream media is not there because it just happens to be the most interesting or important thing going on in that day, but it's because of the numeric riddle that lies underneath. The media pushing an agenda, one of the New World Order, the governments of this nation, and they're doing so literally casting spells on the public. And you've seen this in full force this year where this virus that's changed the world that everyone's experiencing has successfully spellbound millions, if not billions, of people into a state of fear, preventing them from doing the things they enjoy, preventing them from connecting with the people that they love. And now, of course, we're being encouraged not to visit our family over the holiday weekend. And this was all predicted. We all knew there was going to be a second wave. This is what the pandemic simulations run by Bill Gates and the Johns Hopkins University revealed way, way ahead of time. So one of the more relevant stories numerologically that popped up recently came on the 19th of October. You'll see here on the right side of your screen. It's a little small, but October 19th. And on the 19th, we get a new story about COVID-19, an update, if you will. And they're telling us that 220,079 people have died of the virus since it reached our shores, I should say. And right away, you got to be suspicious of this because there's a very simple numerology alignment here. The number 22 is a master number, and in Gematria, the word master sums to 22. The 22nd prime number is 79. So right off the bat, we see a prime number relationship, hinting us that there's a riddle here. So I checked into it, and what do you know? Well, for anybody who knows and has been following this pandemic, we know that 220 is a huge number. We pointed out how master equals 22, 22 the master builder number, and in the alphabetic order, master builder number equals 220. Our president is Donald John Trump, whose name in reverse sums to 220, this cipher using Z as 1 and A as 26. And think about how when Donald Trump became the president, he was 220 days after his birthday. Now he's presiding over the nation during the coronavirus pandemic, which equals 220. Now, in the reverse alphabetic order, coronavirus pandemic equals 293. And this is what I want you to see, the true riddle about this story. So although coronavirus was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization on the 11th, it was not declared a national emergency by Trump until the 13th of March. And check this out. The 13th of March is the date that leaves 293 days in the year. The date of this story, October 19th, is the 293rd day of the year. In the reverse order, coronavirus pandemic equals 293. And there's exactly 220 days between these two dates on the calendar. And in ordinal, coronavirus pandemic is 220. So then we get a news story 220 days after the national emergency telling us that 220,079 people have died. Do you see how clearly it is that these numbers are completely artificial, 100% inflated, to again give the idea that we're experiencing this severe pandemic that we need to change our lives for, but yielding no actual significant numbers? Keep in mind, guys, that every year, every 365 days in this nation, an average of about 2.8 million people die. So here we're being told 220,000 are dead when over 1.8 or 1.9 million people would be dead in the same time frame. So are we really looking at a pandemic when we've heard one story after another of people having COVID listed in another death certificate when it was very clear that comorbidities were factors? The CDC itself saying 94% of deaths had comorbidities. And granted, maybe the virus accelerated their death, but these are not healthy people. The point is, it's not worth a new normal, living in a bubble, preventing our time around loved ones. It's not worth it. And speaking of this date that coronavirus was declared a national emergency on the 13th of March, or 1303, notice how coronavirus in Jewish or Latin gematria sums to 1303. In reduction, this sums to 56, and the numerology of this date, 3 plus 13 plus 20 plus 20, summing to 56. Looking back at the gematria of coronavirus pandemic, the World Health Organization called it a pandemic on the 11th of March, or 11/3. All right, so before I get into this story about a Joe Rogan staffer, which, getting coronavirus completely by the numbers, just a quick recap on the basics of the coronavirus numerology. Now, on this channel, I've been talking about the two total solar eclipses creating an X over the United States in 2017 and 2024. These are very significant events. This happens once every at least thousands of years. For two eclipses in such a short time frame, these eclipses are 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days apart from one another. So this is a really rare event, and we knew that these were significant ahead of time. We just didn't know what it was all about. Now, of course, the corona of the sun is what is visible during a total solar eclipse. And at the midway point of these two eclipses, in 2020, see how total solar eclipse equals 202? The election this year pits Joe Biden and Donald Trump against one another. Notice how their gematria sums to 202 when combined. And now in the year 2020, we get this virus. I already said virus several times. It's pointless. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll just carry on like normal. So now we get this virus named after the sun. Of course, many people call it the China virus. On this channel, you'll hear me call it the Eclipse Virus. Donald Trump even got the Eclipse Virus 1 year and 92 days after the most recent total solar eclipse. Many riddles in that. But the reason we knew this eclipse code was significant to begin with is because it traces back to this 1331 total solar eclipse, which never touches a major body of water. It happened on November 30th, which is the only date that sums to 1331. And again, this eclipse in the year 1331. Now we're in the middle of the twin eclipses. Twin eclipses, summing to 1331. The number's 133, summing to 1331. So does 331. No doubt in my mind that this Jewish cipher is constructed with this eclipse in mind, somehow, some way. And when you think about the number 1331, this is essentially 666 times 2. It's actually 1332. This eclipse just 31 days before 1332. Now, shortly after the year 1331, we had the bubonic plague, Black Death. Now, people started to get sick in the 1330s. If you do enough research, you'll find that to be true. But what you'll notice is that this plague ended in 1353, which is interesting because if you subtract 2019 minus 1353, it equals 666. Of course, the word corona equals 66 in ordinal, and it's 6 letters long. Down in the description below, I have my video about the COVID-19 and the 666 agenda, breaking it all down, how all these institutions are coded with the numbers of the beast. So not only do we get the Black Death plague after this eclipse, but then in 1918, we get the Spanish flu pandemic, which rocks the United States, killing about 50 million people globally. High estimates, of course. Well, 1918 just happens to be the last time a total solar eclipse went coast to coast in the United States. The next time this happened, 2017, coast to coast eclipse. So we knew that these eclipses were significant ahead of time. I've been saying 2020 is the year of the next 9/11 event for a while, but I didn't realize how serious this event was going to be. All right. And again, the crucifixion of Jesus occurring while darkness falls over the sky. Notice how Jesus Christ sums to 151 and 43. These are the same numbers as pandemic, 151 and 43. Of course, Jesus dying at 33, eclipse equals 33. Could go on for another day, but there's another video linked below called the Eclipse Crucifixion Code. So that video breaks it all down, and it's entirely what this coronavirus agenda is coded around. So next I want to talk about this story with a Joe Rogan producer being diagnosed with the coronavirus, thus canceling the appearance with Kanye West. And you guys are going to love the numerology on this story. It's just perfect. Of course, Kanye West is a big part of this. And for fans of Joe Rogan out there, you know, I like the guy myself. I'm not going to lie. I watched some of his podcasts. He's an interesting dude, and he's helped my awakening over time to an extent. But at this point, Joe Rogan's offering nothing of any real value to people in the conspiracy community and people who want to learn the truth about the world. You know, Rogan has everybody who enters his studio tested, which I guess is fine, but he's really buying into a lot of the fear behind it. So maybe he just sees it as his responsibility to stop spread it, whatever. But, you know, what I find interesting about Joe Rogan is that this guy signed a developmental deal with Disney back in 1994. And that's a relatively odd thing for a comedian at the time to do. Since then, he's been on sitcoms like News Radio, big-time host of The Fear Factor in the early 2000s. So it's quite possible this guy is connected, and he does have a very interesting numerology, which potentially connects him to Freemasonry. Of course, Freemasonry founded in the year 1717, which is Joe Rogan's birth numerology. Or I'm sorry, his Gematria. His birth numerology has the 105 and 42 as well as the 33. These are all the numbers of Masonry. So, whether or not Joe is involved in this, it doesn't really matter. The numerology of this story is pretty clear because when it comes to these corona tests, anything goes. They can send a test back and just say it's positive with no real understanding of exactly why. So this story here was published on October 19th. So the date 1019, the number 1019 is the 171st prime number. The name Jamie Vernon, his producer, sums to 171 in the reverse alphabetic order. Notice how Joe Rogan was born in the year 67. 67 is the 19th prime number. And COVID-19 sums to 67. So this year, Joe Rogan turned 53 years old. Back on August 11th. In the alphabetic order, COVID equals 53. Now notice how Joe's birthday was the 224th day of the year, leaving 142 days on the calendar. Corona equals 224. Coronavirus equals 142 in reverse. His staffer's diagnosis came a span of 70 days later. Notice how coronavirus equals 70 in reduction. But the real good part of the riddle here has more to do with Kanye West. In standard reduction, Kanye West equals 33. October 19th, the date of this story, had a life lesson number of 33. Rogan's podcast is called The Joe Rogan Experience, JRE for short, which sums to 33 in ordinal. Rogan is known for his Sober October campaigns. Notice how October equals 33. This is also the value of Corona in reverse reduction, 33. Now, when we write out 33, we get this Gematria value of 156. In Jewish Gematria, the name Jamie Vernon equals 1560. And Jewish Gematria is really what ties this whole thing together. Notice how in Jewish Gematria, the word sun equals 330. Remember, it's the corona of the sun that's only visible during an eclipse. Now let's look up Joe Rogan on YouTube. Notice how this man's last podcast was number 1551, and then they had to shut it down. 1551. Well, cracking open Jewish Gematria, notice how sun equals 15 and 51. The name Kanye equals 1551. And in standard Jewish Gematria, Kanye West equals 1551. I find it appropriate that a couple of years ago I made this image explaining this Kanye sun connection to Jesus. Also, this means his second to last episode was 1550, like the number 155, right before the staffer gets coronavirus, 155. And check out Joe Rogan. You know, he's in the game, right? Like I said, he knows what's going on. Notice how his 666th episode, he wears a NASA outfit for JRE 666. Why would he wear a NASA outfit? National Aeronautics and Space Administration sums to 666 in the reverse alphabetic order. And then he did this again for episode 1313. He had the same guest on for all these episodes. All significant numbers to Masonry. Also 1444. That's a good one. Masonic 444 in Sumerian. Now, back in, I think it was 2018, I did a post on Kanye West meeting Donald Trump in the Oval Office. That's why I made this image here explaining the connection. Because not only do you have the Kanye West summing to 1551, but this is an ode to the name Jesus Christ. Think about how Kanye West also equals 123 and 33, like crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Just Jesus Christ equals 151. And when Kanye West met Trump in the Oval Office, he was exactly 15,100 days old. You may recall a news story where his songs were bounced from a station 105.1 The Bounce. Keeping on the corona theme, we had another news story today about New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy having been exposed to coronavirus and now forced to quarantine. So let's take a quick look at how this story was structured by the numbers. First of all, notice how the name Phil Murphy has matching 65 gematria with coronavirus with the S exception. In reduction, coronavirus equals 56, and Phil Murphy is the 56th governor of New Jersey. You have to appreciate how the name Phil Murphy equals 124 and 43, and he's the governor of New Jersey, 124 and 43. This is pretty common. Of course, I live in Wisconsin, where our governor is Tony Evers. His name is 44. He's our 46th governor. The state Wisconsin equals 44. The same day Evers was elected, Brian Kemp was elected governor of Georgia, and that's the only other state that sums to 44. Phil Murphy took office on January 16th of 2018, meaning that on the date of today's news story, it's exactly 1,009 days. This in numerology represents 19, and here we're talking about COVID-19. What I failed to put in my post is that this is also a span of 1,010 days. COVID-19 sums to 1,010 in Jewish Gematria. Furthermore, if we measure from Phil Murphy's August, what day was that? 16th birthday, we find that this is 66 days or a span of 67. COVID-19, 67. Corona, 66. If you measure to the next time that we can see the corona in the United States, which again is the date of the second twin eclipse in 2024, you get 317, which is the 66th prime number as well. And of course, that second eclipse in the year 2024. The media is going to keep pushing this virus, guys, and it's not going to change unless they don't get the right to broadcast. Like, this is already decided. They're going to keep these lockdowns going. They're going to keep trying to push things. They're going to push this through fall. They're going to push it through spring. They're going to push it through next summer unless something changes. And nothing's going to change unless the people do something. I don't know how long it's going to take for people to realize that. I've seen no effort whatsoever in America for this. People want to protest at the Capitol, but it goes a little deeper than that. So hopefully this knowledge continues to spread. Worth noting that Fox's headline for this article was 293. That's that coronavirus pandemic number. So I definitely want to take a look at some other posts that I've made over the past week. One of these is kind of a comic relief for Gematria. Here we have a story about a guy named Jeffrey Toobin who was caught masturbating on a Zoom call. And now he's in a bunch of hot water. He got suspended, all that good stuff. The first thing I want to point out about this story is that it was on October 19th, the date 10/19. Notice how Zoom call equals 119. But the real riddle here is the numerology of October 19th. Notice how October 19th had primary numerology of 69, which is, of course, a number that people associate with sex. This guy masturbating on a Zoom call. But notice how, in the alphabetic order, Zoom equals 69. This guy's name is Jeffrey Toobin, which equals 69 in reduction. He likes to masturbate, which equals 69 and 150. Jeffrey Toobin, 150. Also, the life lesson number of this date, 33. Notice how both the names Jeffrey and Toobin equal 33. Here's a pretty interesting story as well, and I question the length to which some of this might be organic. Now, it's more likely than anything that Doc Emmerich already had decided to retire, and that the media simply decided that they would publish it on a certain date. Or this is totally organic to some extent. I'll let you guys decide. But to me, this was a pretty solid riddle. Hockey broadcaster Doc Emmerich announcing his retirement on October 19th. And for those of you who don't know who this guy is, he's starting to show his age for real here, but really one of the great voices in sports history. Anybody who enjoys hockey a little bit, like I do, really, really appreciates what he delivers to the games and how exciting he makes them, how good he is, how accurate he is. So for him to be gone, it's kind of like the Vin Scully of hockey, or I guess our Bob Uecker here in Milwaukee. So, right away, after 47 years, the 74-year-old is retiring. 47 and 74 go together like peanut butter and jelly, really. But let's look at the date and see how this all pans out. So October 19th was the date that leaves 73 days on the calendar. In reduction, hockey announcer equals 73. Now, we're in the 2020 season, of course, in all these sports leagues, the year of the coronavirus pandemic. The Stanley Cup this year was won by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Oops. Now, the Lightning won the Stanley Cup in Game 6, which was held on September 28th. So this was the last game that Doc Emmerich called in his hockey career. And we'll talk about Tampa Bay and how big they are with sports this year and why, thanks to their numerology. We'll talk about that in the next post after this. Now, if you measure from September 28th to the date of Doc's retirement, you get a span of 22 days. Notice how the name Doc equals 22 in the alphabetic order. Now, the Stanley Cup was won by Tampa Bay. Notice how TB is 22. T is 2 in reduction, so is B. Now, if you write out Tampa Bay, you get Gematria of 79. And remember, 79 is the 22nd prime number. Doc Emmerich was born on August 1st. And let's pull up Emmerich's Wikipedia page so you can follow along here. Mike Emmerich. Isn't it interesting that Mike Emmerich, his common name? It's Doc Emmerich. This is what people know him as better. Doc Emmerich equals 81 in ordinal, and he was born on August 1st, or 8-1. Now, if you measure from his August 1st birthday to the date of his retirement, you get 79 days. And there again is the 22nd prime number. 22 days after the last game, 79 days after his birthday. Michael Emmerich equals 79 in reduction. The word retired equals 79 in ordinal. Also notice how retired equals 43, like the word broadcaster, which also equals the 43rd prime number, 191. The name Mike Emmerich equals 191, and he retired on the 19th of October, or 19/10, like 191. But no doubt, everything is coming up Tampa Bay here in the year 2020. And it's very clear to see something's afoot here. These teams are generally not that good. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Tampa Bay Rays. Some of them have been decent over the past years, but all three of the major sports teams in the city just going off this year. And this is all after it was announced that Tampa would be hosting the Super Bowl this year. But not only was Tampa hosting the Super Bowl, WrestleMania 36 was originally scheduled to be held in Tampa. And isn't it interesting that WrestleMania 36 was hosted by Rob Gronkowski, whose quarterback, Tom Brady, signed with the Buccaneers a week before WrestleMania 36 was filmed. Gronkowski himself even came out of retirement and joined Brady for the Buccaneers a short time later. At the end of last month, the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup for the first time in a number of years, over a decade for sure. I want to say 2006. That could be wrong. That might have been the Hurricanes. 2005 maybe. Last week, the Tampa Bay Rays clinched a berth to play in the 2020 World Series. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting their stars, Tampa Bay winning the Cup, the Rays making the World Series. Everything's coming up Tampa. And again, TB 22. The 22nd prime number, 79. Tampa Bay, 79. Next, we're going to look at the coaches of these three Tampa teams to see how they all have numerology pointing us to the death of Kobe Bryant. And of course, remember, Kobe Bryant, who was born on a date with 56 numerology, is buried in Corona del Mar. In Kobe Bryant's 666th career game, he scored 81 points, the second most in NBA history. The name Kobe Bean Bryant summing to 81 in 2 ciphers. And his death occurring just as the coronavirus started to become all the rage, just as lockdowns proceeded in Wuhan, like literally the same week. So all of these coaches seem to be related to Kobe numerically. Now check this out. John Cooper, the coach of the Lightning, who won the Stanley Cup, born on August 23rd. Well, that's interesting because Kobe Bryant was born on August 23rd. Cooper was born in the year 67. Notice how Kobe equals 67 in Jewish Gematria. His death fell on a date with primary numerology of 67. Total solar eclipse, 67. COVID-19, 67. Blood sacrifice. Human sacrifice. And check out the name John Cooper. 111 in the alphabetic order, which means his name equals 666. Now, if you measure from Cooper's birthday to Kobe Bryant's birthday, you get a span of 11 years in one day, just like John Cooper in ordinal. Also, check out how the name Cooper in Jewish Gematria equals 248. Well, that stands out because Kobe Bryant wore numbers 24 and 8. He coaches the Lightning, which sums to 24, the number that he retired with. Next, we look at the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whose name is Bruce Arians. And check out how Bruce Arians also equals 111 and 666. How wild is that? 2 coaches, both coming up 666 for this city. So 666 is 3 sixes. It's also the 36th triangular number. The name Cooper equals 36 in reduction, and the Lightning won the Stanley Cup 36 days after Cooper's birthday. It was the 54th career playoff victory for John Cooper. Kobe Bean Bryant equals 54 in reduction. So both their names equal 666. Now when we write out 666, we get this value of 2038, like 238, again like the birthday of Cooper and Bryant, 23/8. We also get this value of 103. Well, Bruce Arians was born on October 3rd, which falls 10 months and 3 weeks exactly before the date, August 23rd. He was born in the year 52. 6 equals 52. But we mentioned how John Cooper was born in the year 67, a number significant to Kobe. Well, Bruce Arians was 67 years old when Kobe Bryant died. Finally, the coach of the Tampa Bay Rays is Kevin Cash. Notice how Kevin Cash was born on December 6th, written 12/6. That's a lot like the date that Kobe Bryant died, which is 1/26. Now here's the riddle connecting these two men. Of course, 666 equaling 126 in Sumerian. Notice how Kevin Cash was born in the year before Kobe Bryant was born. So Kevin Cash was born 26 days before the first day of 1978. He was also born 260 days before Bryant. The name Bryant equals 26, and Bryant died on the 26th day of the year. Bryant played for the Lakers, which sums to 206, like the number 26. The word sacrifice summing to 206. The 206th prime number is 1277. The name Kevin Forrest Cash equals 1277. And again, you have to appreciate the fact that the name Cash, in light of the fact that the New World Order is trying to eliminate cash, paper cash from society. That's a big part of this. All right. So let's see. I've actually only been on for a little less than 40 minutes. So I guess I got time to look in the chat and everything. I'm actually getting a little bit hungry. You know, you start talking, you get into this stuff, you start burning calories you didn't realize you would be. So maybe we'll get there in a little bit. Yeah, just kind of browsing through the chat. Thanks to everybody for jumping in. Pretty good turnout here for this live stream. Always nice when I can schedule these things a little bit ahead of time. I'm probably not likely to schedule these days ahead of time because I simply don't like making plans that far ahead of time. Kind of live a little impulsively, by the seat of my pants, so to speak. So I know I didn't really open it up to questions earlier, so I'm not really seeing much in the chat here. Well, here's a question from Lisa. Lisa, thanks for popping in and saying hi. Is this a simulation? Well, I don't ever say that because everyone's idea of what simulation means is slightly different, and I don't think it properly encapsulates what we're experiencing on this planet. When you say simulation, you're talking about pretending, right? You're essentially rebuilding an environment and trying to replicate something that's already occurred or already happened. So I think that's generally what people mean. I don't know about you, but the experience that I'm having is all unique. It's all brand new to me. So to me right away, no, it's not a simulation because I don't recognize what I'm seeing. In fact, what I'm seeing continues to surprise and shock me more and more every day. The synchronicities I experience are just out of control. So, you know, what are we simulating? Are we simulating our ancestors' lives? Are we simulating something else? I don't know. But what I do tell people is that we live in a realm, we live in a construct that's designed for our consciousness, or perhaps that our consciousness designed. This is why I'm a strong believer in quantum mechanics and theories involving the usage of the double slit experiment, the observer effect, the fact that what we look at and observe literally changes the functions of elements and particles in reality. That should be pretty alarming to many people and tells you that what we see and what we witness and hear is not simply the result of randomness, but is the result of consciousness, what we're consciously paying attention to, what we're consciously putting effort and energy into. So, if the framework that's required for things like that to happen is what you would call a simulation, then I guess yeah. But again, it's a mechanism, and it's an experience that we're meant to have. I think, to me, numerology is a window into these functions of reality, functions of manifestation. The reason I don't always say sports are rigged, even though I do think they are, especially the NBA, there's not even a question. But, what I've noticed is that when people engage in activities and they're putting their mind to something, they're at some level, somewhere deep within, there begins some sort of mathematical equation that gematria and numerology provides a window to. And you see this when people buy homes and you realize they're moving into a house with that matches their gematria. Me, for instance, I tell this story a lot, but I have the same gematria in reverse reduction as my father, 130. I paid exactly $130,000 for my house, and my address is 1954, which is the year my dad was born. And there's a riddle in the street I live on as well with, that I'm not going to tell you for the sake of not telling everybody where I live. And then when I moved in, it was on my 32nd birthday. The word house equals 32. So I see this in other people as well. I helped a guy move last year who moved into apartment number 25. Well, he was in the 205th day of his 25th year since birth. My brother and his wife just bought a house. His number is 13. His name has the same gematria as 13. His wife's lucky number is 13. The address that they're moving into has 213 in it. And I could go on and on about the riddles of the highway and the name of the address. But again, I'm not here to tell you where everyone in my family lives. So that's how I see it. So shout out to Alex. I like to think this was a pretty good stream. I tried to condense it. I didn't want to go hours today. What you've noticed, too, is that if you look at my blog, I've been making shorter blog posts. And it's not to say that the Eclipse code isn't in play with a lot of these stories. A lot of the time it is, but just trying to get to the point. You don't need all this extra stuff. And it allows me to make videos like this, where I can cover a number of stories in a short amount of time and not have to take hours out of your day. But, this is a very interesting comment, too, here from Space Cat in the chat. Shout out to you, bro. Gematria set me free. I no longer have anxiety. I don't read this often enough. I myself, now, have I struggled with depression? Sure. I don't claim to be, to really understand what people go through all the time, because I feel like my depression manifested differently. Like, for me, it wasn't that I ever felt sad or that I felt like I had nothing to do or no one to get along with, but I was just bored, Maybe a lot of people can relate. I've also been diagnosed as a bipolar, which I don't really have that many symptoms of anymore. I don't struggle with it. And so I've been on things like lithium. I was also on antidepressants for a couple years, which I weaned myself off of. And really, that happened in 2016, which is right when I started to get into gematria. I started creating the Gematrinator for Excel and started to kind of take my own look at it. And throughout that year, at first it was just an experience into conspiracy, and then it became something greater. It became what the Kabbalists are, some good Kabbalists anyway, are doing when they look at this, is that it provides a window to all of this. These spiritual functionalities underlying the five senses that we can interact with. There's something greater going on, and that's where you get the tree of life from. At the bottom of the tree of life is manifested reality, but they understand that there is a number of things going on beneath the surface, and that's what those other spheres represent. It's only the manifestation that we see, but numerology is a window to the workings of those other spheres. So when I started to get into this, it started to give me a purpose, and not everybody's purpose is to learn and teach Gematria. I'm not saying that's the case, but for me personally, it was a spiritual thing, and it gave me something to do, and then I realized that my own life is coded by the numbers, my own name has the same Gematria as Gematria. All these things, I realized it fell into place, and I thought I was awake because I thought 9/11 was a conspiracy. I had no idea what waking up really meant. And now I feel like I've completely snapped out of a dream, and that what I'm in is nothing like this world that I grew up thinking it was. I feel like every single day is just pure magic on some level. Something happens where I'm just like, wow, that was impossible. But since 2016 and I got into this, I have not struggled with depression on that same level at all. There's especially, I think, late fall last year, going into winter, I felt this whole 2020 thing coming. You know what I mean? Like, the wavelengths were striking me on my subconscious, and I got really kind of weirded out and sad, not depressed, but I didn't feel right. And now I realize why. But yeah, I mean, I want numerology to have that effect on people. Because when I came into this, you're looking at the news and how everybody's getting offed by the numbers and everyone's getting murdered. Guys, let me tell you for certain, not everybody's getting murdered by the numbers. The presence of a numeric riddle is not proof of a murder. We all live and die by the numbers. It's connected to consciousness, as I've been describing. And consciousness is connected to Gematria. So that's how these things work. Of course, people are getting murdered by the numbers. I definitely believe that. I say that with certainty, I don't know, but I think we're foolish to say that something isn't going on. But, to think that everybody's getting murdered, even the people in their 80s and 90s, how depressing and sad is that? That you think that you yourself could not make it, could not be anybody without sacrificing something. That's a low vibration to stay into. And I realized I was kind of trapped in that and trapping a lot of my viewers in that for a long time. So recently, I've done more work in the organic matrix. I've been a little less positive about how I'm conveying some of this information because I'll admit I don't know for sure. And I'm trying to learn about this like everyone else. So to me, the organic numerology, that stuff, when you realize that not only are these news stories are by the numbers, but that you are by the numbers. You are the result of some sort of operation happening in a different dimension. That, to me, is empowering. That's the opposite of having fear vibrations from negativity, like the idea that everybody's getting murdered, Maybe I'm being ignorant, but, I'm glad to read this because, a lot of people I share this with, too, they're like, this at least makes me feel better about it, that something's under control. Like, I explain how there's a big riddle behind this coronavirus, and some people such as myself will say, hey, this is all bullshit. We shouldn't be afraid of this. But then some people who don't know about Gematria see this and they think, this makes me feel like it's all going to be okay. Like, there's something happening at a greater level that's deeper than me, and it's meant for another purpose. And regardless of what you think about the coronavirus, this is all happening on many dimensions, the way I see it. And there's something satanic and evil about it, telling people they have to cover their faces with no science supporting this fact. And in fact, if you saw my Twitter this week, I posted an image of the news saying record number of new COVID cases, 60,000. And I put just a big text, no numerology or anything, just text saying, wow, sure is nice to see those mask mandates paying off, isn't it? Because the masks don't help, and anyone who say it does is fooling themselves. But the longer we keep putting these damn muzzles on our faces, walking around like we're all terrified of one another, the longer this shit is going to continue. And for a while there, I thought it was getting better, but when I walk around and see people, nobody's really, well, not nobody, but very few people seem to be rebelling against these false rules. These imaginary stipulations that they're all holding us to. And, the reality is, it sucks to breathe in a mask. And what pisses me off is the people who wear them and then, berate others for not wearing them without admitting that it sucks to breathe in a mask. Now, again, I have asthma, so maybe it's a little harder for me than others, but man, unless you got a really special mask, those things suck. It's like, admit it. You don't like wearing them. Nobody likes wearing them. Whenever you look at a sports game where you see fans in the stands, it's like at least a quarter of those people aren't wearing their masks. And why is that? Well, it's because it sucks. There's really no other way to put it. You know, I'm glad to see a lot of people haven't worn one. I have worn one twice and was at the same place when I went to get my hair cut. No one really in my circle of friends or family is a hairstylist, so it's just kind of been one of those things I just had to do. But I let my nose out so I could breathe properly, and nobody said anything. Nobody cares. And that's really what it comes down to, is that it seems like nobody really cares. You know, I've never really been berated in public. I was scolded once or twice by people, but that ended in my favor. But, I mean, how many people are getting sick because of masks, you know, wearing the same mask, breathing in bacteria from it? And then they take the COVID test because they feel symptoms, and then the COVID test comes back positive, even though they have no idea why, because it's a freaking PCR test, and anything flies. All right, so I've been ranting for a while at the end of this video. I think I'm going to wrap this up. We're looking at about 1 hour here, about 52 minutes. Not too bad. But, you know, sometimes I just need to get it all off my chest because there are few people in my life who will listen to this. And I think for some of you, there's not enough people in your life talking like this who are, you know, so convicted about what they're saying. I think it just kind of helps. And that's why, you know, when I looked at the number of viewers here when I started ranting, it was like 120, and now it's 140. I feel like, you know, people like to hear things that they agree with, and thanks for agreeing with me. It's good to be reminded that people are paying attention and that the calculator has made a difference. You know, is COVID a hoax? Hey, it still might be. Again, they're using a test that's not designed for viruses to give them an excuse to lock people down. The WHO themselves has said COVID-19 is, by all regards, an exosome. And when do we see exosomes? We tend to see exosomes when there's damage to the cells. And I just question about what a virus really is, you know. You know, it seems like in this case, what they're looking at in the cells could just be the body's attempt to repair itself from damage. And what type of damage is it incurring? Is it coming from electromagnetic frequencies? Is it coming from things that have previously been injected into their bodies that are now becoming activated? I don't know, like, exactly what's going on, and I don't talk about it much because I'm so far from a scientist. You know, if I was to guess, I would say that, yeah, there is a bug going around that's making people sick. And it's probably some sort of modified virus because it doesn't behave anything like any of these other normal viruses do. You know, damaging people's sense of smell and making them sick for weeks or maybe even months. There's definitely something to that. So I'm cautious in calling it a hoax. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. This is all about the agenda, the fear porn that they're trying to sell. And, you know, that's the real thing here. You know, regardless of whether or not people are getting sick, to some degree they are. There's no denying that. But we need to be more aware of what's happening around it. Another question I've been getting a lot lately is what I think of Donald Trump and the political scene going into this year's election. And it's a fair question because I don't really talk about it that often on this channel. And again, to be honest, I have no idea. Now, if I was to set a wager down, I would put a lot of money down on the fact that Donald Trump is a character actor and that he is this illusionary opposition against the New World Order. But really, the New World Order has long-term plans. They're phasing this in over a long time. So when they start to do it here in 2020, there's got to be some opposition who's going against it. And that's what Donald Trump represents. So, no, I'm not voting for Trump. No, I don't support Trump. But if you're voting for Trump, I'm not really angry at you. Obviously the election, especially this one, could be as rigged as ever. But would I rather see Trump in office than Biden? Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I don't like the guy. Seems like an asshole. But at least it would be more entertaining. I just feel like a Biden and Harris thing would accelerate it. Ultimately, is the agenda going to be pushed in the next 4 years, or is it going to be pushed in the 4 years after that? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just delaying something, but I just don't think it matters, guys. I really don't. So, no, I'm not voting. To me, that's consenting to a system that has declared authority over us without our consent. And, it's kind of my way of saying I don't give a shit. So, no, of course, I'm not voting for Biden either. I'm 35 this year. Vote for me. I'm not going to start like a GoFundMe campaign or anything. But if you want to put my name on the ballot and write it in, do it. Whatever, I'll serve. I'd be making more money than I make now. I'd have a bigger platform to talk about Gematria. So fuck it, just throw my name down. I don't care. But I've seen the signs going up, and this election cycle is very strange in Wisconsin. There's someone running for state senate who you can look this up. Her name is Jessica Katzenmeyer, and I use the term her very loosely, because if you look at the person, you'll realize it's not just a her. There's something else going on there. And people in my neighborhood have signs supporting this person. I'm just like, really? This is what's going on? You see Biden and Harris signs around here, too. I live in a neighborhood that's probably mostly Democrat. But ask anybody why they're voting Democrat, and it's just because they don't like Trump. No one likes Joe Biden. It's crazy. My last name is spelled Tikkuri, Tikkuri. I'm writing that down in the chat. It'd be cool to get, a couple dozen votes, right? So maybe in another 35 years, we'll have a nice majority. Oh, but what I was going to say about the election signs is that I wanted to put an election sign on my front yard that just says, candidate person, go my party. Pretty much done here anyway. So maybe it was just a little hiccup in the stream there, but I think we're fine. My last name is Finnish, actually. Real quick, before I close this live stream out, if you look up Tikkuri law in Wikipedia, you find that this is a district and major region in the municipality of Vantaa, Finland, a little bit north of Helsinki. It's actually a major airport here in Tikkuri law. My aunt visited here and said that she got like a bunch of free food when she showed her driver's license. They were like blown away that there was a Tikkuri in America, because I think we're the only family of Tikkuris in the nation. But what's so cool about this name, Tikkuri, is that notice how Tikkuri in Finnish is an amount of 10. How crazy is that? My last name translates to a count of numbers, and here I am teaching numerology. I love that. And Tikkuri law was a marketplace in Finland through the 1800s. And so a lot of people use this term, Tikkuri law, and it just kind of caught on as the name of the district, I guess. It's pretty strange. So yeah, that's a quarter of my ancestry is Finnish. My dad is Finnish. He's also Irish. My mom is then German and a quarter, or she's a little over 50% Jewish. That comes from my grandfather that she and I never met. So on top of the fact that I'm part German and Jewish and Finnish and Irish, I also have 3 half-brothers that are part Japanese. So World War II is not a topic that comes up in our family reunions very often. But yeah, it's a cool last name. growing up, it was one of the most easy names to make fun of because I used to say that my name was Tickery. And that's pretty much how most of my family pronounces it, Tickery, but it's not pronounced Tickery. You know, if you ask a Finnish person how it is, it's Tikkuri. And it rhymes with Hickory Dickory Dock. So that was pretty much my entire childhood was Hickory Dickory Dock jokes. So eventually I was like, all right, let's diffuse this before people get any ideas. And it's worked out all right. All right, everybody. Thanks for jumping in the live chat. Really good turnout for this. Really appreciate all the love and support. It's good to see how people talk about how great the calculator has been and how it's improved your lives and helped spread truth because, I like to think that on some level the butterfly effect was enacted with the launch of the calculator and, maybe that was just enough to set us over the edge and prevent our lives from being taken over by this satanic global cabal. All right, guys. Peace, love, God bless. Talk to you next time. See ya.